Alright guys, so what is Python? Just based on that and what you learned before, can we just go around real fast and just give a quick description of what you think Python is from what you learned and how it's different from HTML and Unix, Linux, and CSS, the other languages that we've learned so far?
Python is a programming language.
Yeah.
It differs from HTML in that all HTML is just a scripting language and just puts a simple page up. Python makes packets of data and then uses that data to perform other functions, usually with that same data.
Yeah, so that's basically it. It's more comprehensive. There's more opportunities, more things to do with Python, and it's object oriented, meaning it has data structures. You have a data, you have your object name, and then you have your object value or your object data, and that's how you set up basically Python programming. Okay. Here's the levels of Python. It's up here again. Applications, test scripting, data analysis, scientific research. Okay, so we got this, lesson plans. Okay, I'm sure we're going to list this, all this stuff. Ints, floats, strings, booleans. Remember, those are the four major types of variables in Python, and they're the same type of variables that you're going to see in Java and other object-oriented programming languages. You're still going to see your integer, your float, your string, and your boolean. So practice, I'm pretty sure we have like a pretty good understanding of this. So these are variable functions. Remember, when you want to cast a float or a string that has a number inside into an integer, you just go int, and then you parentheses and your whatever variable you want inside of it. String, same thing here. You put anything inside, it's going to basically add quotation marks to the start and the end of that variable. And then float will turn an integer into a float value. And then lists, they're basically a sequence of variables, a list, ordered list of variables. Like here you have your list name, which would be your object name, and this would be your object value, which would be, in this case, something designated by brackets and a list of different elements of that list. So a few list examples, other commands, range, length, list, round. Remember, range gives you that many items in a list starting from 0. So if you do range 5, it's going to give you 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, because that's 5 items. Length is going to give you the scalar value of how many elements are inside a list. So if you give it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it's going to tell you there's 5 elements in that list. If you round functions, go round a float number to that many decimal points. Loops. Can someone just go over what a for loop does real fast?
A for loop sets up a condition, and if that condition is met, then it does something.
I think you're thinking about the other type of loop.
Oh, just no, that's the for loop.
Wait, you're thinking about the if loop, the if statement, right? So like if some condition.
No, for the variable or whatever thing that is in that something.
Okay, so maybe I just didn't maybe I wasn't on the same page as you, but basically a for loop is you have a list, and then you have a variable in that list. So you do something some number of times based on that list, and you go through each item in the list and you do the same commands to it. Which is that what you're trying to get at? Okay, so that's a for loop. You have your for and in; those are your keywords up here, and then you have for this, for each color, it's going to set that equal to red, blue, green. It's going to print them out, so red, blue, green. Second example, a little more complex. For count in this, it's going to print it and then print yes that many times. So it says it equal to 1, 2, 3, and then 1 yes, 2 yes, yes, 3 yes, yes, yes. If loop, that's when you have a condition. You say, if this condition is true, then do something. And basically you have if, and then you write your condition here, and then you have a colon, and that signifies basically then, and then you tab into your commands down here. Else if is a statement that basically operates just like an if statement, but it comes after this if statement, meaning that if anything that comes through here that doesn't get filtered by the if statement that isn't true can still go here. If it is true for this else if statement, it's going to do the commands underneath here that are tabbed into this command. And if it is false here, then you could do else statement, which means no matter whatever, basically you would do the commands that are tabbed into this else statement. If loop command, big list, we have this stuff, and we kind of just did this before. So a good example of how you use a for loop and an if statement within that for loop. And these are supposed to be tabbed into. Okay. And then we have functions. So we have a def for defining a function. That's a keyword. Your function name and your parameters, which are just a list of different variables that you want. Remember, you don't need to use a bracket. You just designate basically a sequence of different variables that you want. So you have apple, comma, pear. You don't need those brackets at the end for this. Then you have commands that are tabbed into the function. Remember, there's going to be that colon at the end. You have commands, more commands, and then you can use a return function, which would basically stop the function itself from going on and returns that value, and you can set that equal to an object name or a variable name. So basically, you can return a list, you can return some kind of object value, and you can set that equal to a object name. You can also just leave this out if you don't want to return anything. You just want to print something. That's fine. You just do print something in here. That's how you would basically write a function. Example that we've done before. We have these traits. You add strings together, and then you return the description. And then, so final grade calculator activity, we did this before. Everyone seems to get the hang of it now, so move on. Okay, so even or odd. Do you guys remember, we did this last time, do you guys remember how it looked like or what kind of procedure we actually made to do this? Yes? Everyone good? Okay. So what about this top one? Create a function to parse a list into two lists, one for odd. And that's something I showed you guys at the very end. So that's with the new function, the append function, and how that works. I'll just give you notes on the append function. Basically, is going to have some type of, first you have to import something. So this is a package, just np. You don't have to most of the time. That's one thing to do, but actually I need to try this out and see if it comes in that package or is already pre-installed into Python. But basically, the append function is where you have a list name, some list, and you go dot append, and then you do basically item name. So for instance, if I had a list called list or whatever, and do dot append, and then I wanted to append 5 to it, I could append a 5. And if I set x equal to 5 beforehand, then I could basically do list append x, which would add 5, would add 5 to the end of the list. Okay. So that's what the append function does. It's a little bit different from your print function, from your other functions that you've learned, because you don't have at the very start of whatever you're trying to do, because in this case, you're working on two different kinds of values. You're working on a list, and then you're changing that list to include this item in it. So you would have your list name, whatever you call it, dot append, and the item name. So we'll take that list, and whatever variables or elements it has in that list already, it's just going to tack on this new element, which in this case is x, to the very end of the list. So it's going to be, it's going to be one item bigger, and it's going to have the original elements plus the new element. So from this, and some of you guys might have taken notes on the my solution to this problem that I have. But based off of those two, if you guys could write a function and tell me how your function works to solve this problem up here, I'll go around and help out if you need any help or if you have any questions, and then we'll get started on some other stuff afterwards. And if you guys already have your odd and even one where you separate the two things around, that's a great structure to look at to just play around with, because you can basically, because you already have a way of filtering odd and even numbers, you just have to be able to append them to lists basically. And remember the empty list, the list where you just do open bracket, close bracket, and that's a list that's empty that you can append to. You can start adding items to that list. Let me know if you guys have any questions. So it's kind of the same format, but make sure you have that odd even list instantiated as an empty list at the very start of your function before it goes into the for loop, because you don't want to keep making that equal to an empty list. You want to keep it where it is and then append to it every time you go through the for loop. So that's what I would do. it's a good to note. Um, just note that basically your function can't act on something outside of the function. So if you do set up your empty list and then you define your function, it can't call upon those items outside of the function itself. So you gotta define the function first, then instantiate your empty list. Odd list equals empty bracket, even list equals empty bracket, and then do your for loop and all that stuff. Do you need help? No? Well, are you done? Alright, I'll check. Yeah, second.
I feel like I got really close. Alright, so starting here.
So two things. One is don't use the print use return function, right? Because you're trying to save these two also, if you look at how your print is tabbed into it, it's going to do all this for X on the list. So for everything inside your list right here, it's going to basically do all this stuff. And after it pins these new items to, it's going to print this list, which is why it's like a pyramid almost. Because it's going to go
It's
pin
pyramid
this one.
It does it like 1, 2, 3, 4, and like it sends each number through the list and then prints it as each number goes through.
Yeah. So if you want to tab that out to the same level as the for loop, then it only prints it when you're all done with that. And then we'll see what's in. And then make sure to replace that print with a return function too.
Alright.
That looks pretty good. Pretty good. So that's what happens when you just type it in. But if you want to set this equal to x, y, or something, right? Separate. Then you can print x. So that's this way you save this list. Because return right now, if you don't set it equal to anything, it's gonna basically print whatever you have. So it's gonna print out once and then kind of lost that value basically. You have to call upon it again if you want to get the same value. But if you set it equal to x and y, now whenever you call upon x and y, you can throw this into a different function, and you save these as lists basically equal to x. This one's equal to y. So print x. Then you can do this over. You can find the length of x. You can do a bunch of other stuff with it. So. But yeah, good job. And Tony, are you done? Done. Luke, you good or? Let's see. Define a function twice, right? Shift. That way, you're not setting odd, even to odd list every time. You just set equal to even list once. Once you're all done with this, so you have your complete odd list, complete even list. Every time it goes through, it's going to add X to either odd if it's odd or even to if it's even. And then afterwards, you have the odd list and your even list. You can set odds equal to your odd list, even equal to even list. Then make sure to have this also outside of that loop, because otherwise you're going to be returning each time you do this, you're going to return the same thing. So you don't want to get caught in this for loop, otherwise it's going to do all that stuff. You just want to do once after the for loop is done. So if you do this, you do enter and then try to test it out. Just put in a list. Odd, even number. So you want to open up parentheses, right? And then so go open parentheses here. And then you can put it whatever list you want inside, so you can do brackets and then just type which values inside. Okay. So in that case, then you don't need a bracket, just type in odd even. Well, odd even number, and then you can operate, that's your function name, you're calling on a function. And then in parentheses is what you're going to be operating on. That's going to be your odd even list. Okay, so did you have another odd even function or something? So with the summing, it thinks this is a function, right? So if you want to change this up, you just call it list. So how do you call this? So if you want to, I would just call this list to be simple. Because I think it's trying to read within the function. So just call it list and actually call it list. So that's a very list, whatever list name you're trying to do it. Changes the list name. You change that to, okay, and that should work. And if you set up, you set lists 1 to list 1. Go ahead and type whatever number you want inside of that. You'll get a lot of just so you can see the words. And now you call line functions, odd even number, and operate on list 1. Just this one, just like up here. So yeah, those are your lists. And what you could also do if you wanted to save these numbers, you could just go like odd, even, and then set that equal to your list, odd, your function. way, it's going to save this part of it, which is this function, takes the list, breaks up to odd, and then even. So now you have to save as odd and even, so you can return, now you can print odd, right? It's going to print this out, and you can print even and stuff. So, alright, everyone looks good now? Alright, so I'm going to go do a quick walkthrough. Solution, right? So this is what most of you guys had. I just call mine function name odd even. You have a parameter, some type of list. And then you have your odd list is equal to some brackets. Even list is equal to empty brackets. And then for x in list, meaning it's going to go through this list right here, and go to the first item, second item, and so on. Every time it's going to say is x remainder 2 equal to 0, meaning is it even? If it is, you're going to append it or add it to the even list right here. Otherwise, it's going to be odd, because if a number isn't even, it's going to be an odd number. And then you're going to append that number to the odd list up here. Now, you do this all the way through the whole list right there, and you're going to put your return function not inside of this for loop. You're going to put it on the same level as your for loop, even list, and odd list, because you don't want it to return the same thing every time you go through your for loop. So you don't want to return the value like, a lot of different times depending on how big your list is. You just want to return it once when it, the for loop is done and you have your complete odd list and your complete even list. So you return odd list, comma, even list, and then you can call upon your function, odd, even, and the sum list of integers. It can also be a list name in here. In that case, you wouldn't have brackets here. And then you can set it equal to two things, because you have two outputs. You have your odd list and even list. So you set two variables equal to this, to the output of this function with a designated list right here. All right. Now we're gonna go look at a quick piece of stuff.